Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds by nerds, I'm Nerdarchist Dave, and I am hanging out with Anceline Online today, which I encountered you over on the TikToks.
Hmm.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
Good. I know like a lot of people over here on our live chats, they kind of know like I've been kind of excited about this community that's been like bubbling up over on TikTok. um because like it's like the newest and most innovative thing to happen to D&D in a long time, in my
It
opinion.
is. There's a huge D&D TikTok community. It's great. I love it.
I think Jacob from XP to level 3 was telling me he did like search the hashtag D&D over there and got like some ridiculous amounts. I want to say a billion, but that sounds way too high. But it was like a ridiculous amount of hits that came up for it.
Oh yeah. It's really interesting. I find because there's like subsets of it, right? Because there's a lot
Uh,
of people. I think part of the reason part of the reason TikTok appeals to me and I think to a lot of people who are into D&D is because it's a creative outlet, right?
yeah.
So like it's a great place that you can pop and be creative and talk about this hobby that you love. The benefit to TikTok in particular is just like its accessibility in terms of the like you just need your phone and the app, and then you can make videos and you can be good to go. And of course, you can have more if you want more, but you don't need more. You just need a working phone and the app, and so like pretty much anything can put content out pretty easily. And it's this creative space. You get like people who are like doing like cosplays of their original characters and telling stories through it. You get people who are like talking about interesting subsets of rules, and there's so much out there. You talk about world building. You get even like the wider TTRPGs, although D&D like kind of dominates because it dominates everything in the TTRPG world. Um,
It's like it's basically like it's the nerd version of Harley Davidson, right? At this
yeah,
point.
yeah, it's the most known name. So like
Yeah.
if you know TTRPGs at all, you know of D&D. And if you don't know about them, that's the one you probably know of.
Yeah.
And it's great. I love D&D. I'm also a big fan of like try other games. There are other really cool games out there. You should try them. But I mean, if the only game you play is D&D, that's great too.
Yeah, I guess the thing is like it's just easier to find other D&D players.
Yeah,
And
that's a huge part of it.
yeah, and also like, we're a lot of us gamers now are older or coming, either been in the hobby for a while or coming to the hobby later in life, and time and scheduling is so hard already without going, here, learn this new rule set.
Yeah, yeah, it's an easily accessible onboard point for people, and I
Which,
think that that's all people need sometimes.
yeah, but it's kind of odd and funny because it is that not actually the easiest like RPG to learn.
No, it's really not.
There's so many
It's
easier
really
ones.
not. There are so many easier ones. I haven't played a lot of other TTRPG. I'm
Yeah,
playing Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay game right now, actually, one of my campaigns, which is not the easiest game.
that's what I was gonna say.
Like
I
it's
haven't
not better
even
than
looked
D
at
and D
it.
in terms of ease of accessibility, but there's others that I've
Yeah.
heard on like actual plays or like read up about or whatever that I'm like this would be so much easier to introduce kids to. There's one that we have that I actually really like that's like for kids, right? It's called
No, thank you,
called
evil maybe.
Hero. No, it's called Hero Kids maybe.
Hero Kids is one too. Yeah.
I don't. I should have looked it up before, but and it's just like kind of a pared down, simplified kind of like
Yeah.
it's a very D&D in flavor. You can be
I
you could
feel
be a
like
fighter or a wizard or whatever, and it's so much simpler.
I might be a little biased, but I think No Thank You Evil is even simpler.
I
And
haven't checked that one out. I will
so
have to
it's
check that.
resource management, and so like the more complex rules involve like these pools, but for
Mm-hmm.
No Thank You Evil, those pools consist of chits. So like why I
Ah,
like it is because visually a child that isn't mathematically capable yet, they know the difference between their pile going up and down.
yeah, my pile is bigger. This pile is small. Yeah,
Yeah,
as
like
opposed to like having to read the numbers on a dice pool, which
yeah,
is not easy for everyone. It's not even easy for me. Like roll six dice and look at them and be like, I have to figure out what that number is. No, thank you.
yeah.
Not. It's amazing that I'm into D&D, given how much math is involved in D&D, because it's not my area of expertise. I'm just like, you give me more than two numbers to add, and my brain short circuit.
The
So I love other mechanics. I'm interested in other mechanics because I think it's just really interesting what you can do to like do those story points and those decisions without necessarily using a die.
Have you played with any of the Powered by the Apocalypse games yet?
I haven't. I really want to.
Yeah, they're
I've
great.
seen
They're
a
some of
bunch
the
of
easiest.
them,
Yeah,
and I'm like I really want to try that. That sounds really cool.
I highly recommend Monster of the Week.
That's the one that I've heard the most of. It's definitely on most of it. I've got several friends that play Monster of the Week and really enjoy it.
Yeah, well, because it's like 1 through 6 you failed, 7 through 9 you succeed, but something
Yeah, mixed
happens.
success.
Something bad happens as well, and like 10 and above you just succeed. So it's like super easy. You have moves are right on your character sheets. All the character
Yeah,
sheets are just like they're like pre-gen characters more than they are like than character sheets really, with a couple tweaks that you get to make.
yeah, yeah. And I think that's great also to like bring someone in as like you're thinking about like learning
Yeah.
like this this hobby. I at this point, because I have hyper fixated on D&D, I do know the rules really well, and I feel comfortable with them, but like at the beginning it's a lot to parse, and something like that you're just like, okay, well, like here's your sheet, it's got everything you need to know on this one piece of paper, and you just roll a dice, and you just need to keep track of, is it above a 6, and then is it above like what, like, if it's so much simpler um to just
Yeah.
pick that up and go, and it still gets you that you can still tell those same stories with that same impact. And Powered by the Apocalypse is so like modular, like you can use it for a lot of different flavor of games as well.
Yeah,
The
I'm
cool things
running one
about it.
now, and I find it's difficult sometimes because like I want to like ask for checks, but I'm like, you know what? I don't think I need to ask for a check. I will just give them information. You just get, because you're just used to playing D&D, and there's checks for everything.
There is checks for everything. It's like it's yeah, it's almost like a cultural thing, right?
Yeah.
The culture of D&D is a specific way, and then the culture of a different game is going to be a different way, and that's both intentional on the part of game designers and also like on some levels I think unintentional on the part of game designers. Like it depends on the game designer and also the game. But there's a lot of like the way you build mechanics affect the way you play the game, and this is one of the things that I don't know very much about but think is so fascinating. Like I love the way that the very structure of the game mechanics themselves influence your play.
So
um
we were talking before we got started, and you're relatively new to the hobby, but
yeah,
you've kind of like jumped in both feet first, right in
I
the deep
am
end.
nothing if not overly enthusiastic about my hobbies. So yes, I did jump in both feet first. This has become a little bit of a hyperfixation for me. But yeah, no, I do at this point. I know like a lot about D&D and other TTRPGs because like I'm interested and I pay attention to it, and I like look up and I follow a bunch of people on TikTok that not just talk about the stories you tell with D&D, which I do love that, but I love conversations of game mechanics. I think it's interesting to talk about like why is this, to use a D&D example, like what is the difference between having this spell be an action versus a bonus action? How does that affect gameplay and the action economy of D&D? And that's not something that a lot of people go that deep in their hobby to think about because you don't really have to, but I do.
It's a nerd thing. I
It
mean,
is.
since the
It
dawn
is.
of time, us nerds have been like comparing stats to things, and it's just another way to kind of like enjoy the game. So
Yeah, absolutely. It's like those people who are like really into sports and know all of the stats about like this particular player on this particular team. And
they even
I
cosplay.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like I'm like, okay, well, I don't feel that way about the sports thing, but I
Yeah.
feel that way about my game. So I get it. I like my game, you like yours.
So DM Guru 2 wants to know what your favorite monster is.
There are so many cool monsters. Okay, my favorite. Okay, I'm gonna go with the two that I'm most recently thinking about. I just really like flumps because their name and their like they look like jellyfish.
So
No
fart
other
pancakes,
reason.
basically.
Yes, they're hilarious to look at, and they have an amazing name. This entertains me.
Yeah.
The other one I recently came across is a flail snail,
Mm.
and I just think it's a really fun. I did
It's fun to
my.
say.
It's fun to say. They've got all these cool. These got some fun, neat abilities. I was looking them up for something or other, and it was great. I like that one. I actually played my son. My eldest is 10. He loves D&D. Not great at playing it because he does have ADHD and you can't get him to focus on anything for more than 5 minutes. But I did a stripped down flail snail, and we'll just do battles. So I'll just set up a table with a couple of, we have a few minis, and I'll just set up a couple of minis, and we'll just play a little battle, and he likes making characters, and he and his dad, my husband, make characters together a lot because my husband really likes that part of the game. And so they'll sit
Yeah.
down and they'll make a person, and then he has this person, and he's like, "Mom, can we play a game?" And we'll set it up. So
And then you mash it with a flail.
and then I'll just like find a flail snail, and he has. I did strip down the power level of the flail snail because he had 2 level 1 characters that he wanted to play, and I was like, let's simplify this so that they don't absolutely slaughter my son's characters.
You didn't want to teach them about losing early.
Like losing gracefully, and there's your mom just like smushed your D&D characters for no good reason. And I didn't want to do that one.
I don't know. You could probably look on the floor behind them and be like, "I'm totally smishing this D&D character."
But yeah, it's fun. I've been DMing a campaign, and so I've been like paying more attention to like monsters. Like I've always been interested in them to begin with, but when you're a player, you tend to like they come across your path. You don't spend as much time like seeking them out.
Yeah.
As you do when you're running a game, because you're building encounters and planning and that sort of thing. At least theoretically, I don't do a lot of planning. I intentionally told my group, and intentionally I'm using a module because I wanted like the least prep possible, because I wanted to run a game, but also I have 3 children and a life. So yeah, we're running Lost Mines of Phandelver for them, and so far it's going really well, and I'm really enjoying it. And they're a great group, and spend an immense amount of session arguing with each other about the ethics of body disposal, which is great because when I don't have time to prep, we come and we sit down, and they get into an argument about, is it okay to reuse the bodies of your foes? And I just am like, okay, well, you enjoy that conversation. Well, I just read this book for
See what's next. Yeah.
It's great. It's fun. This is
I was gonna say you could give them a pet killer mimic or something to help with their body disposal, but it sounds like you need them to argue about it for a bit.
Oh no, I need them to argue. And here's the thing: it's because we have one character with a very strict ethical code. It's a weird ethical code. He's a barbarian, and he is got strong opinions on the like. It's okay to kill people, but you got to bury them respectfully once you're done. And then we have our lizard folk artificer, who is basically Dr. Frankenstein and likes to take body parts and make things out of them.
Yeah.
And it's endlessly entertaining because they do not agree
on anything.
On anything.
They only agree on killing, and then after that, then the battle begins.
After that, they're like, "What are you doing?" Yeah. Well, I need to anyway. So last session, the artificer did make darts out of the fingers of dead goblins.
Have they found ways to compromise?
They're getting there. We haven't been playing that campaign super long, and it is the sort of thing that I'm like, I personally, both as a player and as a DM, I have no problem with party conflict as long as the like actual real people involved are not upset. But not everybody likes that, so it's the sort of thing where like sessions go, and I'll like check in with them both after and be like, okay, are we still feeling like this is fun arguing, or is it starting to edge into and if it's not, and if they're both having fun, great, that's fine. We'll keep doing that as long as possible. But if I feel like either of them are starting to not have as much fun, then it's the sort of thing where I'm like, okay, well, I know that your character is this way, but let's make some meta decisions for, general party unity so that everyone at the table is having a good time. Because that's what's really important.
Yeah.
Um,
The Curse of Strahd game we just finished up. Fletch was an Aarakocra that would take the fingers of ladies and toes of men, and and their character was modeled after a vulture. So they're like periodically they just be popping fingers and toes to munch.
That's fantastic. Oh my God.
Yeah,
I love fun flavor decisions like that. That like they don't really matter mechanically, but they're
yeah.
just so much fun to play out and they add so much depth to the story.
Well, they did matter more later because some of them were from like hags and I
This
think
is true.
Ismit, who's got like a fiendish arm. So eventually, like, eventually it did come up like maybe you shouldn't have been eating all that stuff.
That's that's great. I love it. I love
So
it.
Digio 007 has a question for you. What monster would you like to be a playable race that isn't already?
I don't know. I don't know the monsters that well. A lot of them that like I would have liked as playable races have become playable races. Like
Yeah.
you didn't used to be able to play like goblins and you can now, which is fun. I like playing goblins actually. I think they're great.
I blame
There's
Pathfinder. They made their goblins so cute.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. There's so many cool ones out there. I think it'd be fun to do like honestly, I would love to see like actual dragons as playable races, although that's chaos. I don't think that like that would be difficult to do because you would have to put a lot of restrictions around what dragons could do. But I just think that'd be so fun to just like get to play a dragon.
Well, you can probably find on the DM's Guild the
Absolutely.
the Council of Worms was a box set that Wizards of the Coast put out. It might have, or TSR. I don't even remember which edition it was for, but you played dragons.
That yeah, see, that's fun. Dragons have so many cool stuff.
Yeah.
And they're just such a classic. I mean, I know it's kind of basic, but they're just such a classic part of like the fantasy worlds of like that, especially the ones that D&D is based in, but like so many fantasy worlds. I'm a fan of dragons.
The one of the questions from Joffrey is, what has been your favorite DMing moment?
Favorite DMing moment. Um I mean, I haven't been doing it for that long, so there aren't that many. But I really did enjoy my favorite DMing moment was just, I mean, it's really just my favorite thing that my players have done.
Uh huh.
But they had just had a battle. They had fought a couple of goblins, and they had one goblin that was a, my wizard just like the wizard in my group likes to put everyone to sleep, which they're still like level 2, so that's fairly effective on a field of goblins because sleep can knock out like 2 or 3 of them. And in this particular game, one of the goblins was asleep, and they're like, well, when they wake up, we'll ask this goblin for information about the stuff that they were trying to find information on. And their choice for doing that was to have the artificer that I mentioned earlier was turning one of the other goblins into a shield, while the wizard using a cantrip to like help tan the hide of this other goblin was just politely asking questions
Oh my
of
gosh.
the tied up goblin while helping the artificer turn their this poor goblin's former companion into weaponry.
What is the
I was
barbarian's
just dying.
and what is the barbarian's stance in turning your enemies into shields?
The barbarian does not like that. The barbarian thinks that if you have defeated your enemy in combat, then you owe it to that enemy to like give them a proper burial, not repurpose their body parts into weaponry. So yeah, so they had this moment of basically just psychologically torturing a goblin into telling them everything. It was
So much
fantastic.
therapy.
But
That
they did ask the goblin her pronouns just to be sure. which was just the
That
cherry
was
on the cake
that
for
was very
me.
thoughtful of them.
I know. Psychological torture, fine, but we're not going to misgender anyone.
Yeah, yeah.
That was just like the point that just really tipped me
I
over
I,
the
I
edge.
just feel like the most woke person on the planet is not going to care about that while you're turning possibly a relative or close friend into a shield in front of them.
It was I just loved it because like it's one of the things I like about that group is they will always ask, both like in and out of character, like is it male, is it female, whatever. They will always ask, and so they did like they're very because like in real life they all care about being respectful in that way, and I just thought it was hilarious that they chose that particular moment to continue
Yeah.
holding up like this is so important that we're gonna make sure that we're gonna not that we're just gonna make sure that
We're
you
not going to
know
misgender
respect
you for the
that
rest
you are a
5 minutes of your
girl
life.
while we turn your companion into a shield.
Yeah.
Just so yeah, that was the point that just like really
I
absolutely
feel
sent
like
me over the edge.
you're going to
I
have a
just
lot more
dissolved into
moments with
laughter.
that group.
So many more moments, so many more moments. We actually I played with them last night, and it's great. We there's the three of them, the wizard, the barbarian, and the artificer, and we just had another player join the group last night, um, and it was great. This is another friend that I knew from somewhere else. So this is a group that I like had individually asked each of them to join because I wanted to run a campaign, and I knew that they're friends that like aren't playing in other campaigns or whatever. But I
Yeah.
like thought about I did handpick them to be like a good table vibe.
Yeah.
Um, because I wanted it's my first it's like this is the first time I've DM'd. Uh, and so I wanted people that I would not have to worry about playing with. Um, that I have known and played with in other contexts, and that I know that it's going to be a space where if I do something stupid, they're not going to care.
You picked your friends.
I did, I
Yeah.
did.
How it should happen.
Yeah. And so yeah, it was excellent, and I had this fourth player join who's playing a kobold monk. So we've now got a lizard folk and a kobold in the party in a setting that doesn't usually use either of them, which is fantastic.
Nice.
I don't care as long as it doesn't like as long as it's not a game breaking mechanic. You can do whatever you want, really. Save the game breaking nonsense for one shots.
Yeah, I mean we're pretty accommodating for what people want to do in the game. Like we just like options, so we don't see the point in
Yeah, I mean,
limiting.
like, I want everyone to have fun. And if fun for you means you get to play a kobold with wings, sure. You're level
Yeah.
one, you're not going to get to fly. But that's okay. I don't mind if you have wings for flavor. Go for it.
Nice.
I really like I really enjoy that kind of how can I take every loophole and make the most ridiculous build possible. Like I do really enjoy that, but it's not the sort of thing I enjoy in a like long-standing campaign. I think like that's something you make an absolutely broken character for a one shot, you play your one shot, it's great, it's fine, and it's not, causing problems for your DM for the rest of the campaign.
Well, congrats on DMing. I mean, you jumped into it fairly quick, and that's actually one of the things I love about this next generation of gamers. They seem to jump into running the games much faster. They I feel like a lot like coming up gaming people really were hesitant to DM for the first time and like
Honestly,
almost sought validation or permission first.
well, it's hard, I think. I also think, honestly, one of the things, and I'm like, I've never played any edition of Dungeons and Dragons but 5e. I know a bit about each of them because, again, like the history and the mechanics of gaming is an interest of mine.
Yeah.
But like, I think that the rules of 5e are a lot more accessible to get into, especially as a DM. Like, it doesn't feel like you have to know everything to start figuring this out. And from what I've heard, that was less true of older editions, just because they were a lot more complicated. There's a lot more moving parts. I mean,
Yeah.
again,
So
I'm not an expert, so I don't know exactly, and I've never played them. And I mean, any system you can learn well enough to do, but
A
that's one of the things I consistently hear.
AD&D kind of had like less rules, but they had complexity for complexity's sake kind of built into them.
Mm-hmm.
And then like third edition was just about we're going to define every rule under the sun,
Yes.
and that becomes really difficult for a new DM because then like you got players that know all the rules better than you do, and there's so many of them.
Well, and like if you're not in a group that you know super well and are super
Uh,
comfortable with, that's going to be really difficult. Like the reason I picked these four people to play with is because I know that, I mean, they will give me shit constantly because they are my friends, and that's the kind of relationship I have with people. But
yeah,
like ultimately they're not gonna argue with me about a rule, and if I say I don't like that rule, or if I go I don't know that rule, there's not going to be any tension there. And that's when there's so many rules to keep track of, and if you're at a table with people that aren't like that, that's
yeah,
intimidating. That's really intimidating
it
if you don't
absolutely
know.
is, and playing games online has opened up a lot of possibilities, but also with that comes the extra baggage of playing with people you don't know very well or you're not familiar with. So, like, is it going to be a fight at the table just because you don't know a rule? And
Exactly. Well, and like for me, I don't generally like I've been a couple of like different groups of people that I've met online, but I'm not likely to start playing with people unless there's people that I've like kind of chatted with and had conversations with in like the Discord server, the Facebook group, or whatever it is. Unless I have a feel for them as a person before the game starts, right? Because I don't want to just jump in with complete strangers because I don't know what that's going to be like.
now I've done that a bunch of times too, and your results will vary.
Yeah.
But
You never know. Like
yeah,
sometimes it might be really great, and other times it might be really horrible, and I just don't know.
yeah. I mean, I guess when we do it most of the time, it is people we've interacted with kind of online, so you kind of know them a little bit, or we're doing it from like we have fan games, so
Yeah.
like that changes the dynamic, I think, a little bit.
Or like you're doing like a convention setting, and
Yeah,
that's a different setting entirely, I find. Because it's a different kind of cultural context. Because there's a specific kind of setup, I guess, like overarching reason why everyone's there in a way that it isn't when you're just like looking for groups on the internet.
yeah. Well, now that you're TikTok famous, as and the world is starting to get back to somewhat normal, will you be hitting any conventions?
I mean, it's not really normal here yet. Our province is doing really poorly with vaccine rollout,
Uh,
which is sad.
I know.
But I have my first dose. I would love to do conventions. I did not like reach the point in my like nerdiness and self confidence that I felt like going to conventions until after I had kids. So I actually haven't really been. I've been to like one in my entire life because I didn't. It didn't wasn't a thing on my radar until after I had kids. And once you have kids, it becomes a lot more complicated to do that sort of thing.
Do anything.
Yeah. Especially because my eldest has some special needs. So like you can bring your kids to a convention, but he gets overstimulated by sounds and noises
Hmm.
easily. So convention's not a good place for him. But
I can
I do really want
empathize.
to. I'm like really excited to get to do that sort of thing once the world starts to be a bit more open and less, plaguey. I think that, so like I have always thought that sort of thing sounded super cool, and I would love to have more experiences in that world.
Yeah, so I shouldn't say we. I came to conventions late as well. I mean, we had already been doing Nerdarchy for a couple years, and I hadn't really been to many conventions before that. No gaming conventions, like for us too, because when we started gaming, like it was pre-internet, so like we like developed this gaming bubble, our own little a tiny hut, if you would,
Yep.
of gaming sphere, and we've just been lucky that we've always been able to have enough people to play even if it's only like three players and play in person. So
Well,
there
that's
was
the
never like a
thing.
drive to expand out.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing for me. Like the first group that I joined was all IRL friends before I
Yeah.
had gotten really into like internet spaces. I'm one of those people who I'll join an internet space and I will lurk for a long time before I feel comfortable talking about it. So like I was just like a user on TikTok a long time before I started creating things, and same with like any internet spaces. I will just kind of like join a group of something I'm interested in. I'll watch. But a lot of my my games have a very solid divide. I have like internet people games and
Yeah.
real life people games. Just because like my real life group, I've attracted a bunch of nerds um, in my life. So I have like three of my groups that are just basically different groups of real life people. And like there's some crossover between those, but they're just all people that I know in real life. And so there wasn't really that drive to expand. I didn't need to expand into internet spaces to find people because I had them there. I just was expanding into internet spaces anyway because it was March 2020 and I am an extrovert and was starved for human contact.
Yeah.
So I was just like, I need to talk to people. Any people? Look, there's the whole world of the internet
I
right
feel
there.
I feel really bad for you extroverts during these dark days. But for us introverts, we're like, oh, finally,
You're like,
everyone has
yes,
just gone
everyone's
away.
leaving me alone.
I'm at home. My stuff is here. I like my stuff. Don't really like people as much, and they're out there. It's good. I went
Yeah.
to the gym for the first time yesterday. It was like I felt like a groundhog coming out of their hole. The deciding whether or not to go back in or not.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's been interesting. It's been interesting. And I just find, because for me, I love people. I love talking with people. And a lot of the ways that I get those like social interactions were like things where I would go out of my house and meet people, whether like with friends. And it's been interesting. Like my friendships have shifted a lot. Like a lot of my like mom friends I don't talk to very often because we're home with our kids, we're
Yeah.
working, we're balanced. Like a lot of my parents are my like I'm a stay-at-home mom right now, but a lot of my friends are working moms, so it's like I'm trying to balance my work and my kids. I don't have time to just like chat for an hour in the middle of the day with me. And honestly, most days I don't even have time to chat for the hour in the middle of the day. I have time to chat for 5 minutes here and 10 minutes there, but like
Yeah.
it's all that broken up as someone pokes you, going, "Mom, mom, mom, mom,
Yeah.
mom, mom, mom. Can I have a granola bar?" And so I have made a whole bunch, like my friendships with my friends in my life whose schedules don't line up with mine, but have availability to chat like via texting or Facebook Messenger or whatever, have gotten a lot stronger. And that's like like a lot of internet friends and a lot of friends that I just didn't have a chance to talk to as much. So that's been weird, but nice. And I do feel like my mom friends and I will start reconnecting again once things are like, as things start to stabilize, and we can actually do go to a park with our kids again.
Soon.
Um,
I mean, so this Saturday we had our first in-person game, and like everyone's vaccinated at the table, and we're waiting for 2 weeks, and so we're
that's
finally
so
getting back to
exciting.
that. Yeah, and
That's so
then
exciting.
so weird seeing people again.
I'm looking forward to that. Several of my groups are groups of people that are all here in the city with me. A lot of my
Yeah.
groups are like spread across the continent. But a couple of them, and we have been talking about, we'll get back to in person. I mean, probably not soon, just because like I said, our province not doing great on vaccine rollout,
Yeah.
and most of us have only had one dose, if
Yeah.
we've had a dose at
Just
all.
sneak over the border. Apparently, we can't get rid of the stuff.
I mean, please and thank you. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's so I like I've done in-person D&D like twice in my entire life because had only just started playing, and we did it a couple of times with a group that I was actually trying to run, mostly because my son really wanted to play, and I had a couple of friends who were like, "Yeah, I'll play with your kid." That's fine. So we would have
Nice.
dinner and
Yeah.
we would play like 5 minutes of like time in the game that took us 2 hours because everyone was going nuts. But we only had like 2 sessions before the pandemic hit, and then it just kind of fizzled out because that was too much to do over Zoom
Yeah,
with a
yeah.
9-year-old with ADHD and 2 other kids in the house. So that was just not practical.
Well, hopefully soon you'll be able to get back to it. And
I
gaming
would
in
love
person
to.
is just a different experience too.
Well, that's the thing because like for me, I just find keeping track of everything on like a screen or just in audio is like it's doable, but it's a lot. And there's a lot of
Yeah,
times where I would like to just lean over and poke someone and whisper. It's not something that I
yeah.
need to like say to the whole group. And you can do that by like texting someone or like messaging them or whatever, but it's not the same vibe.
No. Well, it's like I kind of say it's akin to like the difference between listening to you know one of your favorite bands and going to see them. Like
Yeah.
just live anything has a different energy to it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, I'm hoping that we get to do that. Several of my groups will stay online always because they're like, I live in this city.
They're your
And
Narnia friends.
yes, they're like, yeah, they're like the friends that like, here I am in Canada and you're in North Dakota.
Yeah, yeah.
So no, we're not going to be playing in person anytime
That's
soon.
why you have to figure out getting to cons because then you get to see your internet friends in
Exactly.
person.
Yeah.
That's the best one of the best
Yes.
parts.
Yeah. I would love for that to
Which catcher wants to know: is there a character you've played whose personality is very different from yours?
Oh, that's a good one. Yes and no at the same time. I always start out making a character that's a little bit similar to me and a little bit different from me. And then as I play, it becomes more obvious how those play out. So right now, the one that's most different from me is probably I'm playing a wizard in one of our it's a high level campaign and it's really fun. I'm playing like a level 18 wizard and it's nuts. It's great.
So much to
But
track.
so much stress. Oh my gosh. I do the same thing a lot because I don't have to keep track of everything. I love wizards. They're not my favorite class, but I am really enjoying playing this one. But like she started out like when I built her, she started out to be very, very much like me. And then the way that the story progressed, she's not at all. It's like so interesting. Like, and not just like partly because of the things that happened to her, but partly as like things go by. Like I'm not a big builder of personality and backstory before the campaign starts, right? Like I have all of the mechanical stuff down and I have like some vague ideas, and then the rest just kind of comes out in gameplay. Like someone will ask you a question and I will be like, but something comes out of my mouth.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, okay, that works. And so it's really interesting because she's very much an introvert, which I did not initially plan because I'm not an introvert. I don't know how to do that, but she is. She like really values like personal space and privacy.
Yeah.
So like if she wants to be left alone, she wants to be left alone. She doesn't want anyone around her. She's just like go away. She's really, really anxious. She's a lot of anxiety and she's always feeling overwhelmed by everything that's going on around her. And now that is not me. Obviously there are things in my life that cause me anxiety, but I've always been a very like chill, roll with the punches kind of a person. So playing this person who's like a little bit uptight and always stressed, especially in like a high level, high danger campaign, is just really an interesting experience for me. Because
So
I'm like,
luckily,
huh,
even though you don't know how to play that character, she does. So
yeah, it's great. It's great. I'm like, I did not think this would happen. Which I love. One of the things I love about like a role playing game is you'll start out with an idea in your head and then often it'll come out and your character will end up being totally different.
yeah,
Really
I am
interesting.
also not big in like completely like pre-planning everything about the character. I like to kind of like see how it rolls out, during
I
the
will
game.
habitually hand my DMs character sheets where the background just says, I don't know. Like the last game I joined is this campaign set in Eberron, which is I love Eberron as a world. It's so cool. I'm playing 2 campaigns in Eberron right now, and it was my friend Caleb who's running the game, and it's kind of like a piratey theme, or it's in Stormreach, and I made the character, and on the like classic 5e character sheet, you've got like the ideals and flaws and bonds and all of that section. And I just wrote,
Yeah.
I don't fucking know. Sorry, Caleb, on the character sheet and handed it to him.
I used to fill those out, and I feel like they're really useful for new players.
They can be. I
But
like the first time I was making a character, I remember like looking through them, and I do still when I'm building a character, when in the sections where it's like here are option ones, I will like read through the options, and be like, I wonder if that resonates. But like the
yeah,
only characters that I've done that for, I would put those things in. I've done that for like 2 or 3 characters. Put those things in, and then I'd play for like 5 sessions, and then they wouldn't even apply anymore
yeah,
because I would find who the character was, and I was like, well, these don't work, so I now just don't do them.
and and that's just it. Like I think they're great until like you start to figure out how characters develop in a game, and then you don't really need it. It's like they're like training wheels, right? They're
Yeah,
great in the
well, like
beginning.
it's a tool,
Yeah,
and like any tool, if you like, it helps you to get a framework that helps you get where you want to go, and if you don't need that framework, you don't need to use it.
exactly. And also like the intent behind that whole section was like we're gonna tie the inspiration mechanic to it, which I always thought was dumb. It's like, especially because the DM has to
Well,
know
and no one
everyone's.
does. Well, and that's the thing, and like no one does that because the
Yeah.
DM then has to keep track of like, and there's like four boxes there that the DM has to keep
Yeah.
track of for every character to
Yeah.
like.
Forget that.
No. As a DM, no, I'm not doing that. Are you kidding me? I can barely keep track of your abilities.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know your race and your class and your name. You can figure the rest out yourself.
I mean, we're when we started playing Monster of the Week, I think someone asked me about something on the, I'm like, I don't know, that's player stuff.
That's your problem. You can
You were
sort
the
that out.
player. Work it out.
And like with a new player who hasn't played before, um, that's something where like I will take more of a hand in like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, no, okay, so this means this and that means that, and I will pay more attention to it for a new player, just because they're not going to be as aware of that. But if when I'm playing with a bunch of people who played a bunch before, I'm just like, it's fine, you can sort that out. I don't need to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, so when I read the Monster of the Week book, I just skipped over the playbooks. Because I'm like, that's player stuff. I don't need to
Yep.
know that to start playing the game. And
Yep.
also, like, when we were playing, like, in all fairness, like, I had 2 players that have played that game much more than I had. So, and I just said, hey, I might lean on you guys for the rules
Well,
as we're
and
playing.
yeah, and when you're with a good group of people that you know well, like that's the great thing about it is you can just be like, can you remind me of how this works because I don't
Yeah.
remember. So that's a huge thing because like not everyone has that same knowledge.
And at the end of the day, it's supposed to be a cooperative game anyway. So,
Yeah,
you
that's what I
know,
like about it.
we're
Is
here
that
to
like
help each other facilitate the story.
yeah, everyone wants to have fun. We're telling a story together, and you're working together as a group to like have something really cool happen. And you have those like story moments that stick with you. And ultimately, the story moments that stick with you very rarely have a whole lot to do with mechanics. They might be like you rolled a natural 20 and that had led to a great moment in combat, but like what you remember tends to be the story beat, not the mechanic that facilitated it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's not, and those aren't going to be the memorable moments that you tell at the table. Like years from now, it's going to be like what actually happened in the story.
Yeah, like we in one of the campaigns I'm playing in, our party was fighting a shadow dragon. They kept turning invisible, so we couldn't see them. And what the way we ended up defeating the dragon was we used a glitter bomb that had been one of those dumb joke items that the DM gave us, and
That'll
our
teach
bard
you,
had the
GM.
glitter. Our bard had the glitter bomb and was like pretty close to the dragon, and went, "Well, I think I know where the dragon is," and the dragon was covered with magical, unremovable glitter. And that's the part we're going to tell. It's not the mechanics that matter there. It's the part
Yeah,
that we get to say we defeated an invisible dragon with glitter.
yeah. Or it's going to be remember that time when Joe was the DM and he thought he was so funny giving us that item that was useless.
Yep.
And when we
Um,
use it to defeat his big bad.
one
So
thing that I have learned about D&D is that no item is useless ever. It may
yeah.
seem incredibly useless, but someone will find a way to make it absolutely crazy.
So it sounds like a lot of fun. You also, I don't know if we touched on this, after we went live, but beforehand we talked about you're playing in a lot of games right now.
Yeah, I am. I am playing in six, seven, something like that. I have a couple that I might start but haven't like confirmed or started yet. Most of them are like every other week. So generally it's
Yeah.
like I will join a group that's like every other Monday and then I go, my brain can't handle every other, and so I find something that's available in that time slot on the off weeks. So I have a lot of like Fridays I play two campaigns that alternate weeks because that way I'm always playing Friday at that time. It just changes which game I'm playing because I don't like inconsistency in my schedule.
That's kind of like what we did with our Saturdays, and we've done it for years now. Is just like we do a monthly game,
Mm-hmm.
and like it's me and Ted in all the games, and then like a different group for each Saturday.
Yeah.
Because also, like, one of the reasons we did it is like it's a lot easier for people to commit to one Saturday a
That's
month.
the thing. I'm in a group. We actually started. This was through another disc. Like through we made a Discord group with a couple of friends from one of the other Discords I'm in. That was just like the idea of it is these are pickup games. We're just gonna run one shots here and there, and
Yeah.
you can make a character and join this one shot. And there's a lot more people in the group. Like not everyone's gonna play every time, but it's like let's just do a one shot when everyone has time because like it's definitely much more accessible. Um, to just say like once a month we're going to run a game and whoever's available can play for that one shot. We play for like 2 or 3 or whatever hours, and then you don't have to like stick to that. And if something comes up you can't play, that's fine. You're not missing anything important because it's only one shot.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of started running our regular games that way. Not that, like, we tried to make them more
Yeah.
episodical for one, just so that when people aren't there, it doesn't matter as much. And two, like, when we used to game in like our early 20s, we were kind of very punitive to people that did not show up. Basically, we were dicks.
Yeah.
And,
Well, everyone's a dick when they're a teenager and in their early 20s.
as we, aged and matured, we're like, it doesn't make sense to penalize our friends because life gets in the way or whatever.
Yeah.
That's also when we stopped tracking XP, and it's like we just level up when the DM says level up, and if you weren't there, the only thing you lose out is the loot. And if someone wants to give you something that they found when you weren't there, they will. If not,
Yeah.
that's it. So
Well, and I think it's like that's how I like playing. I like being able, if it's a regular like long running campaign, I like to be able to have it going at a regular interval, whether that's monthly, weekly, bi-weekly, whatever that is. I like that, and I like it when everyone is able to be there, but like sometimes life gets in the way, right? And you can't just be like, no. Um, so yeah, most of our campaigns, there's flexibility when there needs to be flexibility. And I think that's a more fun way to play for everyone.
yeah, I mean, I remember like we would have one player, his girlfriend would call him out, and because he didn't want to hear us give him a hard time. But like, not that that made it better when he finally did come, because like I said, we were kind of jerks, uh, and it's so much better now that you know it was also like the early 90s, so I don't know, I feel like humanity's evolved a little bit since then.
Yeah.
And the 80s was even worse, so except for music, like that's eight, late 80s early 90s is the pinnacle
Very
of
good
music.
music. A lot of very good music. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't alive in the 80s, but I don't remember the early 90s that well because I was a
Yeah,
very small child, but I remember the late 90s. And yeah, things have come a long way since then.
yeah. Well, that kind of like brings me back to TikTok, and like why I like it so much is because it seems to be so much more diverse over there,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you get a lot
I
of
I
different
enjoy it.
voices.
Yeah, well, because like I said, anyone can have a voice on TikTok, and I think partly because it's not a super new app, but its popularity is new.
Yeah,
It's a lot like it's in that I like. early stages where it's, as a culture, it's solidifying. And I think about like YouTube back in the early 2000s when it was just kind of kicking off, and like really literally anyone could get big on YouTube back then. And it's not necessarily true in the same way now, I don't think, because there's a more of a structured culture of YouTube. This is another thing that interests me, is like social media cultures, the cultures in different social medias. I think this is a fascinating thing. And I think because TikTok's popularity is has kind of surged in the last like year or so, 2 years, in a way, it's kind of still developing that cultural sense. And so you do have a lot more diversity because you don't have an idea of what a TikTok should be. So we haven't quite stratified that yet, and so anyone can be.
I mean the difference in YouTube now compared to when we first started, like we would never make it now because the production
No.
values are so much higher.
Well, that's just it. Back in 2005 or 2008, you could just kind of do whatever the fuck you wanted and people would watch, right? Whereas now, like, you have like whole empires that are like a fully run production company that are making
Yeah.
YouTube videos, and they're really good and everything. But like, if you don't have that production value, people aren't going to watch it on
It's a
YouTube.
combination of production value and also like this newer crop of like D&D YouTubers specifically. They grew up on the platform and they intuitively understand it far
Mm-hmm.
better than I ever will. And
Yeah.
I had to learn everything where they just kind of came in kind of knowing it like through osmosis.
Yep.
Where TikTok
Absolutely.
is like one, it's a low barrier to entry, like everyone has a cell phone. And two, like you said, no one has an expectation of what it is yet. So
Yeah.
it's like everything and nothing all at the same time.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. And I think what we'll see with TikTok is a lot like what we saw with YouTube, that like as it continues to stay in that popularity,
Yeah.
well, one, it'll either fizzle and die like a lot of apps do, or it will get to that point where it's more stratified and people have an expectation of what it means to be a TikToker, like we have an expectation of what it means to be a YouTuber. But it's not there yet, and
Yeah.
that's why you can kind of pretty much do whatever. And again, almost everyone has a cell phone with a functioning camera, and that's really all you need to do TikTok, is a cell phone with a functioning camera and a functioning microphone, which
I I'm enjoying like right now, like there's the metagaming discussion that's going running
I love it. It's so
through TikTok
interesting. And
like
it's
wildfire.
the interesting like perspectives that people have. I love meta discussions about like what does this mean and how does that play out at your table. And I think it's interesting. And I one of the things I like, at least the TikTok that I experience, I'm sure it's not like this for everybody, but the TikTok that I experience is like a lot of people are very chill about that. There's a
Mm,
lot of like, well, I mean, I like this, but there's no right way to do things. And we all know that that's not always how those conversations go. But I, fortunately, I'm so grateful to not have to deal with the, well, I like this and therefore anyone else is wrong. I don't have to deal with that very often. I have
yeah.
like a decent following on TikTok, but it's not huge. And I don't tend to post things that bring that sort of people to my page. So I don't know how long that's going to last, but I'm enjoying it while it does.
I have a little bit of a different perspective, and I'm enjoying it because it reminds me of early YouTubing for us because they're
Yeah.
like the same conversations, and they're just like the same conversations that gamers have always had.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think there was an
Absolutely.
alignment one going around not too long ago as well.
Yep. And
So
everyone's strong opinions on alignment and what it is
yes,
and what you can do for it, and all that jazz. No,
uh,
it's fun.
I mean, and one of the really cool things too is like when I mentioned diversity, like there's virtually no people of color or ladies on YouTube with like big followings. There's a couple, but it's just
Yeah, but they're the outliers.
they are
Yeah,
the outliers. But
absolutely.
on TikTok, like there are so many more voices, and it
Yeah.
is fantastic to see.
I love it. I love it. I think it's great. I like seeing different people. I like seeing different people's perspectives. And I mean, there's like a nice host of white guys as well, but
We're everywhere. You can't get rid of us. It's like cockroaches when you turn on the lights.
yeah, but it's nice. And I like what I like about TikTok is you have that wide range, right? You have like the guy who's in his 60s who's been playing D&D since first like since its inception. And you have the, people like me who have been playing for basically a year more or less, a bit more than that, but like
Yeah.
and it doesn't feel on TikTok anyway like my voice is less interesting or important because I haven't been doing this as long. And I don't think and I mean, obviously the truth is everyone's voice has value, but like in certain settings that doesn't always play out in the way things end up working. So that's one of the things that I like about TikTok, and at least my experience of TikTok is it just like I feel like people will listen to what I'm saying. And that's always a nice feeling.
Who
I'm a
are
little surprised sometimes. I
Yeah.
remember looking at I remember a couple of times when I've like had a bunch of followers jump up because I've gotten a really popular video, and I've been like, oh, okay. I didn't realize that would resonate with so many people. Like I did a video that was half joking about like 4 tips about playing D&D with a baby
uh
on your lap and that one got like far and away more than
it's relatable.
views
It
than
was a
most
good
things.
video.
Yeah, it was. I loved it,
It's
and I mean,
like
it was like 50% tongue in cheek, and yet like
no,
that's
no, it
one of
wasn't.
my
It's
most.
like don't have real dice. They're gonna go right in the mouth.
They
Same
are
as their
going to go
character
right in their
sheet.
mouth. They will eat it. They will eat your dice. They will eat your character sheet. If you have miniatures, they'll eat those too.
Yeah. I feel
But
like all your
no,
tips were basically don't have anything physically they can put in their mouth.
yeah, more or less. And don't spill things on your digital resources.
Yeah.
That said, I play with physical dice constantly and physical character sheets because I don't like digital resources personally. But like,
So
no,
every game of D&D with a baby on your lap is like playing Hungry Hungry Hippos,
more or less, yes. Yeah,
except for
I've gotten very good at
the
it.
consequences of the baby winning could be really bad.
Yeah. Fortunately, none of my children have swallowed dice.
That is good.
But yeah, no, it's an experience. I'm just one of my areas of giftedness is how to continue living normal life with a baby on your lap. I mean there are times and places when life stops for your children, and it should, but there are lots of times and places where life continues, and not just like the boring frustrating parts of life like your job, but the fun and exciting parts of life like your hobbies and your experiences with friends. And how do you keep doing those when you're a parent? And it's hard, it's so hard to keep doing those things when you're a parent, but I think it's really important. And one of the reasons that I do things like TikTok and gaming is that I think that it's really easy as a parent, especially as a mother, and especially as a stay-at-home mother, to have your identity kind of consumed by being a mom to these small people that you're guarding through life. And because it's such a huge part of your life, and especially when you're a stay-at-home mom or dad, it's like the main part of your life.
Yeah.
And it's
Just making
easy to
sure
get
this
lost
thing
in
that
that.
you have stays alive.
Yeah, and especially when they're young, it's
Yeah.
easy to get lost from the rest of yourself. And
Yeah.
one of the reasons that I love doing TikToks, I love playing D&D, I love like my music stuff when I do music stuff, is that it helps me hold on to that identity of who I am outside of being a mom. And
Yeah.
playing D&D, I like playing characters that, aren't married with children, because not that I regret being married with children, but I like to remember that like there is more to me than
There's
just
another
this.
life.
There's more to who I am than just this part of it. And I think that doing those things, even though I have kids and kids make it more complicated, is really important. So that's a huge part of what D&D does for me, especially in this pandemic world where a lot of the other things that I was doing become more complicated.
Yeah, I mean it's good, as a parent and also even as a spouse, in a relationship, to have your own identity and also have things that
Yeah.
you can do together because eventually I've seen this so many times like where parents make it all about the kids.
Sorry,
And,
one of my alarms going off.
oh no. I've seen it too many times where parents just make it all about the kids and I'm like
Yeah.
my friends, I'm like, dude, that kid's gonna leave, and then you're gonna be sitting at your kitchen table in the morning, staring at this other person, not knowing who they are, and then you'll be divorced,
Yep.
essentially.
Yep.
So, like,
Or Or it's like I have some friends whose parents just like they grew up and they left the house and they just didn't know what to do. And
Yeah.
like they don't know what to do with their spouse, or they don't know what to do with their identity. And I've got one friend whose mom is just overly involved in her life because she doesn't know what else to do with her life because she didn't
Yeah.
have an identity outside of being mom. And it's hard. Like I struggle with that. Like my TikTok content doesn't tend to talk about kids a lot. It talks kind of like about the adjacent side effects of having kids, but I don't
Mhm.
like I'm not a mommy blogger. I
Yeah.
don't have like
I mean, I
lots of
feel like
people
the
are good
world
at
could
that.
use more D&D mommy bloggers, but you know.
Probably, but like there's a couple of reasons for that. One of them is just TikTok is one of those hobbies that I do to maintain an identity of this is me. This is me, and I contain multitudes, and part of that multitudes is being a mom, but part of it's other things.
Yeah.
But the other reason is that I think that when you are creating content based around being a parent, it's really easy to slip into that space where your children are your content, and I don't think that that is good for parents or children.
It's weird.
It's hard, and I think that like I don't really want my kids, I don't want my content to be centered around look at my children, I don't want them available for public consumption.
Social media is real, like, because I guess because I'm just old, right? I guess,
Yeah.
but social media is really weird to me. Like,
Yeah.
it's like
Well, I just
coming up,
remember.
airing your dirty laundry was like a thing you weren't supposed to do. But if you did do it, you did it like a normal person, goddamn it, and you screamed at each other in front of your house so your neighbors could hear. You didn't like blast it out on social media for the world. Oh no, did you
Like
freeze?
the early did I freeze?
Yeah, you're not frozen now.
Okay. I remember growing up, like when the internet was a thing. Like I remember before the internet was a thing. Barely,
Yeah.
but I do. And a lot of people approximately my age don't. But I remember like the brand new internet, and I remember like starting to use the internet, and like the culture of using the internet has changed so much. Like I was starting to use the internet in like 98, 99, 2000.
Yeah.
And it's radically different, which makes sense. It's been 20 years literally. A lot can change in that
Yeah.
time.
It's so weird to me because like I seen people that I know and like casually, right? Acquaintances and like they put out a statement when they broke up on, social media. I'm like, "No, why? Like no one even know
Yeah.
if you didn't say anything." I'm sure there's
Yeah.
people that will know, but they're like connected in your life personally.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting, and it's interesting how like the culture of internet spaces is like in each internet space does have its own distinct culture, as someone who is in several different internet spaces, and they're all different from like your in-person culture. It fascinates me. This especially like the linguistic habits of people on the internet, because it's very much a thing. This is another weird interest of mine. It's
Yeah.
just like the language we use on the internet, especially in text-based spaces where you don't have that ability to use facial expressions and gestures and tone of voice to convey information the way that different like internet communities have managed to have almost a like lexicon of tone,
Yeah.
uh, is really interesting to me. But it's so different using the internet than it is in person, and so you do get those differences, especially with young people who've grown up using it, and the way that they communicate on the internet is very different from people like me who I it's a different experience. But social media is weird.
Social media
it's
is
just
weird. That like
it's
just wraps it
weird.
up full
It's
circle.
just really weird. It's cool. It can do so many cool things, but it's so weird.
Well, one day we'll have it all figured out. Nah, probably not. But I want to thank you for coming on. We're just past the hour mark. As always, folks, links are in the description. Go click away and find Anceline Online and go follow on TikTok. You have great content over there. Final thoughts before we head out.
Thank you so much for having me. I have enjoyed this immensely.
I have as well. And until next time, everyone, stay nerdy.
Yeah. Bye.